Hey, and welcome to Financial Confidence. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode on WYTV7, Christian Broadcasters Network. All right. Hey, and welcome to Financial Confidence. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode on WYTV7, Christian Broadcasters Network. We thank you for joining us, guys, here where we're having courageous conversations to help you make your money, keep your money, and grow your money so you can do the things you're called to do. That's to build generational wealth and leave an inheritance for your children's children. I'm your host, Lynn Demmons. That's Demmons, no demons here, y'all, Demmons. We thank you for tuning in for this episode where our guiding principle is Matthew 6:33. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. We also implore that you pray over your finances so you can do those things you're called to do. So if you will, bow with me. Lord, help us to value things in this world that's really valuable. That's our relationship with you, our lives, and our families. Help make us responsible stewards of your financial resources, and let us trust your holy word. Eternal glory in thy son Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, guys, we are super excited. I'm so excited. I'm about to come out of my seat. But we have a special guest in the podcast with us today, guys. He is the couples financial counselor, Adam Kol. Adam, how are you?
Hi, Lynn. Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everybody.
All right. Well, we definitely appreciate you stopping by to have a courageous conversation with us today, because we all know one of the leading factors of divorce in this country is money. Mm-hmm. And I love that you share that you help couples make sure that money conversation doesn't get in the way, right? So that they can actually have more peace, some love, and cash. We like all of that. Not necessarily in that order, but yes, absolutely. We love that. So if you will, Adam, tell our audience a little bit about yourself so we can get into this conversation, get to the juicy part.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what you just shared is pretty on point. That's what my work is all about. And, you know, my background, kind of the first half of my life was a finance background. I studied economics. I became a tax lawyer. And the second half of my life was more about like the kind of human communication side of things. So I did thousands of hours of volunteering and community organizing. I became a certified mediator. I became a coach. And then I realized, my goodness, this is one of the most stressful areas, is at the intersection of relationships and money. And there's so few people who work on this, right? There's very few books, very little content, let alone a coach who would take couples and meet them in the trenches to help them sort this stuff out. And so my work is all about helping you and your significant other get on the same page about your finances, resolve conflicts, learn how to create a space of trust and healthy dialogue, which in turn, you know, the goal is not just stop fighting about money. The goal is to have that be something that actually deepens your relationship and strengthens your intimacy as a couple, that you, through talking about money, get to know yourselves better, get to know each other better, are more supportive of each other, and that it frees you up to actually pursue more of what matters to you in life, right? Whether those goals explicitly involve money or not, that you have that much more freedom to do that, and as your teammates in pursuing those courses of action.
Yes, I love it. What matters most to you, getting back to the basics, really, of the relationship. Awesome. So we want to get in and learn a little bit more about you. So do you mind sharing with us, what was your money relationship like growing up as a little kid? Were there some nuggets that your mom gave you, or anything you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I'm young enough to be comfortable with all the technology and using apps now, but I'm also old enough that when I was a kid, I was taught about balancing a checkbook, right? We weren't doing all the online banking at that point in time. Right. So that's one thing that's interesting. But as a kid, I used to go to my grandparents every day after school, and my grandfather we would go in his room and we would watch CNBC, which I always know is the stock market channel for those of you who may not be familiar. And he loved it. And I became fascinated by it as well. I loved all the numbers. And I'll never forget that he said to me, Adam, I want to teach you about money because I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. So my grandfather was like just this charismatic, charming New York City textile salesman and made a good money. And then he also spent a lot of money when he was, in his 30s and 40s. And so he wanted to teach me how not to do that. And so the beautiful lesson that I learned was how to be a saver and how to be thoughtful about my purchases, right? And on the other hand, the kind of other side of that, when it was taken to its extreme, which I was sometimes doing, was I was afraid to spend on things unless I had researched the heck out of them, unless I knew for sure I was getting a deal. And I realized through doing my own work with myself that I had inherited the story that if you're responsible with money, that's good. And if I'm irresponsible with money, then I'm bad, right? So even when between law school, before I moved out to the Bay Area, I was living there the last 5 years in California, I took a 1-month trip to Europe, and I would tell people about it. And I would start with, and I went for a whole month and it only cost me $2,000 because I got the flight with my points and I stayed in hostels and I ate in grocery stores. And I think for most people it'd be like, I saw this museum and I went to this place and I had fun in this city. And for me, it was like, I got a deal and also I had fun, right? And nothing wrong with the deal, but it's been part of my growth to be able to just enjoy something, or just do something for myself, hire a personal trainer and have it be the biggest line item on my budget just because I wanted to take care of me, or, go on a off the cuff trip to Disneyland in California that wasn't in my budget, but I could afford it because I wanted to take an opportunity to be with some good friends, and enjoy life. So that's kind of been for me, like finding that balance. I still definitely am a saver first, but I think there's really something beautiful about all different sides of it and the lessons you can learn. And so I love to take people on a walk through their past, including their childhood and past romantic relationships, to see what they can uncover. And some of those pieces, they're like, this one rocks. Like, this piece has me like make all this money and I love it. But then they can sometimes also see the downside of it as well, right? And then they're like, oh, well, that's not actually what I want. Okay, so let me keep the good part that has me bringing in a lot of cash and let me let go of the other part that has me like being whatever way I don't like, and now just enjoy the abundance of it all.
Ah, beautiful. To borrow from your words, that's a beautiful story. And I love that you shared the fact that your granddad took you in to watch the stock market channel. How many kids were watching the stock market channel right at that age?
Very few. And Lynn, what was so cool, about a week and a half before we're recording this, I found out that I was actually featured on CNBC's website in an article about like podcasts and books for married couples to help them win with their finances. And so myself and my podcast were listed on there. I have a podcast called the Equal Partners Podcast. It's about everything relationships and money. And that was a really special honor just because of growing up with CNBC. So it was really cool to call my grandfather on the phone. I sent him the link and I had him put me on speakerphone. And I was like, okay, open the link. He's like, okay, it's open. I'm like, scroll down to the third podcast. He's like, oh, he was like, that's you. You're featured in here. That is so awesome. So that was really nice to be able to share with him.
Absolutely. Everything comes full circle, right?
Yep,
that is beautiful. That is
thanks.
Definitely beautiful. So thinking back to your first job, what was that first job that you had, and what did you do with that first paycheck?
Good questions. My first regular job was, I was a bagger at the local grocery store, which if you're in the Southeast, you may know, which is called Publix. That's this grocery store. My father has been working for Publix now for almost 30 years. So I'm not going to lie, it did help that dad was the pharmacist at the local store. It definitely didn't hurt me in getting the gig. But honestly, I saved all that money. If I spent any, I would spend on baseball cards. And at the time, I mean, I was born in 1987, so I was also into Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but I was always a collector.
Oh, yes.
That was my thing. But most of the money would always go to savings. So I remember it was like, okay, you made $100. Great. You're going to put 70 or 80 into the bank account, and then you could spend the other 20. Even though I kind of wanted to do spending the 80, my parents, my grandparents were like, okay, we're going to do it this way. And then when I went away to college, I had amassed something in the order of around $10,000 just from the 4 years of working. And I remember my grandfather took me to the Western Union, and we created a bank account there and like had the money in there. And that was really a moment of pride that I'd been able to put together a little bit of a nest egg just from those hot days out there in the Florida sun pushing around carts.
Awesome. And Publix, I love that place, just saying. With that being said, I think you sound like my son a lot. He loves collecting baseball cards. Today, he loves Pokemon. Today, he came in, Mom, I found a Rainbow GX Charizard something, I don't know, some rare card. And he was jumping all crazy around the house. But anyway, I digress. So I can definitely relate to your stories there.
I'm sure.
Let's move to what you currently do. And the reason I want to go here is because a lot of our listeners are either married or they're in relationships.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And oftentimes there are many misconceptions that come along with money and relationships. I would like for you to share with us what are 2 or 3 misconceptions that people tend to have that you're working with, and then how do you help people to dispel those?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch. I mean, I've done a whole presentation on the top myths. I would say the first one is that, yeah, it's nice what you do, Adam, but it's not going to work for me, right? People kind of think there's something special about them, but in a negative way, that means it's not going to work for them. And let me tell you, that couldn't be further from the truth. I have had couples, my very first couple I worked with, they actually came to me on the verge of divorce. In fact, in the consultation, I asked the wife, so how's this going to go if nothing changes, right? And she goes, honestly, if nothing changes, in a few years, the kids will be older, I'm probably going to walk out. And she said this sitting next to her husband, and it was the first time she'd ever said this, right? Mm-hmm. And by the time they were done working with me, I'll never forget the call where she said, Adam, I was talking to one of my girlfriends and I referred to my husband, Mike, as my best friend. Like, I'm calling him my best friend again. I haven't done that in years, right? Mm-hmm. And it was beautiful. And not only that, but because of the work they did, their church was hosting the Financial Peace University program from Dave Ramsey. Mm-hmm. And the pastor asked my client to be the ambassador, basically. And so he would go up every Sunday and share about his experiences. And they were hoping to have maybe like 5 to 7 people in the program. They ended up with like 27. So, you know, just through the virtue of what he was sharing and that work inspiring so many others. And I tell you, I mean, the wife struggled with numbers and a learning disability. She had every reason to say it wasn't going to work for her. Their communication was struggling, right? But it completely shifted. And that takes me to the second thing, which is people are like, this is just going to make things worse, right? Or it's going to take more energy and I'm going to feel worse afterwards. Well, for them, even before they had healed their communication around money, once they committed to doing something about it, within 2 weeks, they started getting no overdraft fees. And this is a couple who was experiencing about $300 a month in bank fees on the regular every month. They have had zero since we started working together, right? Once they started to get on top of it. And what the husband, when he came to us, Mike, he was most concerned. He said, you know, we worked hard to buy this house that we have. And now because of our money, I can't turn it into the dream home, right? Because we don't have enough money. But amazingly, within a couple of weeks, even though they didn't necessarily have a bunch more money, I mean, they weren't paying the fees, which helped, he was freed up energetically, right? Like kind of spiritually, like that burden wasn't on him anymore of we're never going to be able to deal with this, whether like financially or even emotionally, relationally. And so next thing you knew, he was working around the house. He enlisted the kids. They were helping him with projects. He got his dad on board, helping him with projects. You know, a bucket of paint, $10 or whatever that costs, right? Like all of a sudden he was able to do these things, right? Now, as they went through and worked with me, they also paid off $26,000 of debt and continued moving, and the wife was able to reopen her business. I mean, all kinds of wonderful things happened, but it really illustrates that people are like, it's not going to work for me. It's going to make things worse. It's going to take too much energy. And frankly, the opposite is true, because when you have something like this, it's creating a wall in your relationship. And that wall is actually sapping your spirit, your energy, slowly but surely. Every time you don't talk about it, it just takes more away. And when you actually finally say, we're going to deal with this, and you step into that commitment, and then now you're actually a teammate with your significant other, even if you two are still trying to figure out how to talk about it, but you're at least working together to attack the same issues with the same kinds of goals. And having that deep level of partnership, my couples, they skyrocket in their quality of life.
Yes. Guys, I hope you had your pen and your paper and you were taking notes. If you didn't, go back and rewind, right? Re-listen, replay this episode, because you said something very valuable there, Adam, that a lot of people tend to struggle with, and that is commit to doing something about it, guys. Commit to doing something about it. How many times is it that we've gone and we started these projects, or we started working on ourselves, or whatever that one thing is for you, but we didn't commit to it?
Yep.
Once we become intentional in those actions, it completely changes the game. Yes.
Yes.
So, Adam, I appreciate that. So what would you like to share with our audience that you haven't had an opportunity to share with us today, that before we close out this conversation? Because I think that it's important that we note that as Adam, as the couple's financial counselor, will be able to support you. But do you only work with married couples? Do you only work with, who do you work with?
Yeah, great question. So the main focus of my practice is couples in some sort of committed relationship, right? So sometimes it's people who are wanting to be married, but they may not be married yet. They want to get on the same page and prepare for that. I have worked with individuals as well if they come to me, but the focus of my content is on couples, because that's where I'm the most passionate and can make the biggest difference. And I fortunately have a wonderful network of financial coaches where, when an individual comes to me, I have someone who really fits exactly what they're looking for, who I can send them to. I think the number one thing is to just, what you were saying, Lynn, is have the courage to make that commitment, get things started. I want to especially implore the men out there listening. We're notorious for not being as comfortable with these kinds of emotionally laden conversations. And it's also uncomfortable for us because we're taught that it's our job to be the provider, and we often take that to mean financially. And so when a conversation comes up about money, whether or not we agree that we should be the main financial provider or not, we've still been socialized that way. So when someone is like, hey, can we, like, if our spouse or partners, like, can we talk about our money, that can, even at a subconscious level, feel like an attack and can make us feel defensive. But really, so much magic is possible through this work. So much opening up of relationships. And I love helping people not only get the conversation started. I have all kinds of tools for that, but also now, how do we make that into an actionable plan? How do we turn that into something that's actually helping us achieve our dreams? And that is such a beautiful process, right? But it really is available and accessible for every couple. As long as the two of you love each other and want to make it work, that is the only ingredient, that foundation, that commitment. And we can sort through all kinds of conflicts, all kinds of tensions, and help you be more self-expressed, more in love, have deeper intimacy, and of course, like you said, more cash, right? Just have a better financial situation.
So you triggered something for me, Adam, and I must ask this. So you addressed the men about the emotional impact, but what about the woman that's trying to get her man to participate in this conversation and he's not willing? What would you suggest that what are the trigger words, or if there are any, right, that she can use, or how should that conversation flow to get him to actually engage in this conversation?
Yeah, great question. So first I'll say I've actually created a whole free guide on 3 steps to do this. So I have one specific for women to talk to male partners. I also have one that's more general, but if people are interested in that, the website it's a bit.ly link. So it's bit.ly and then / talk money with men, all lowercase. So bit.ly / talk money with men. I basically line up a 3-step process. Number 1 is to reflect on your own relationship to money and your thoughts and feelings around your past and how things are going now, right? The second thing is to do the same for your partner, because what we want is to be able to build some empathy and understanding. The truth is, you may think that your significant other, regardless of gender, is almost doing it to spite you if they overspend, or they feel really anxious or upset when you overspend, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But the reality is they're dealing with their own stuff just like you are, and that they're just trying their best typically, right? They're not out to get you, but it can feel that way. So to develop some empathy towards them. And then the third step is really to just make that courageous request. And I give some tips in there, like framing it positively in terms of what you want for the relationship. Like, hey, I love you. I want us to have the best life ever. And, sharing a little bit about your piece and how it's been for you. But, I've been feeling a little bit anxious about our finances. I'm sorry I haven't brought it up before now, because that's not really fair to you. But I want to rectify that and step forward. And just saying, like, when's a good time to talk about it? Because what I love about that phrase, and you'll see the same exact one if you download my guide, is like, it says, we are going to talk about this. When's a good time? You tell me when's a good time. It's not, can we talk about this? Yes or no. No, we are going to talk about this, right? And just on that note, I got asked this question once at a meetup, and it was a meetup for women, and I was very honored to be their first male guest ever. And so someone said, okay, well, what if, your guy says no? And I said, so you ask him again. She goes, well, what if he still says no? I said, wait a little bit, be persistent, keep throwing hearts when they're throwing darts. And she goes, well, what if he still says no? And I said, well, then you got to have a real conversation. Like, this doesn't work for me, right? We need to talk about this. And this may not be the right relationship for me if we can't connect over such an important topic that affects us all day, every day, that impacts our decisions on where we're going to live, how we're going to live, our children, our family, how we help out our siblings, parents, what retirement looks like, what our charitable giving is going to be, right? Like, all of that stuff, money is implicated. And so I'm inviting, like I said, for me as a man, I like to invite the other men to step up into that conversation. And for the women and just people in general whose partners aren't willing to, it's maybe not fair, but if you love this person, you want to be with them and make this thing work, to hold them to account, right? We're going to talk about this. I'm going to do it lovingly and empathetically, but it's not really negotiable, right? We're having this conversation because we both deserve it. And there's something really beautiful on the other side, right? Once we can put our heads and hearts together talking about money. So that's essentially in a nutshell what I recommend. Of course, I go a bit more into detail and have some exercises in the guide, but that I think should get some people started.
I love it, guys. It's a non-negotiable. Make sure you have those conversations. Make sure you get that link. Tell us what's that bit.ly again, please, Adam.
Sure. So it's bit.ly, like LY, just to make sure I'm saying it clearly, then / money talks with men. So MONEYTALKSWITHMEN, they're spelled, and all lowercase. I can't promise what comes up if you do any capitals. I don't know. But if you keep it lowercase, you'll get to my link.
Awesome. Yes, they're familiar with the bit.lys here. We use bit.lys all the time. But
Perfect.
So we appreciate you, Adam, for sharing in this conversation with us. Guys, go download that. I think I'm going to go download it as well. So I know a couple of you guys that I can send that over to. But make sure you go ahead and use the bit.ly and get the information that you need. We so appreciate you, Adam, for stopping by and having this courageous conversation with us today.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the audience for being a part of it.
Awesome. Well, guys, we thank you for tuning in for this episode of Financial Confidence. If this information has been invaluable to you, make sure you go over to WYTV7.org, leave a donation so we can continue to do what we're called to do. That's to build generational wealth and leave an inheritance for our children's children. We're here to help you make your money, keep your money, and grow your money. That's right. And we want to hear your money success stories. Make sure you get those over to us. Either email us at financialconfidence2020@gmail.com. That's financialconfidence2020@gmail.com. Or leave us a message. Call us at 470-236-8282. That's 470-236-8282. I'm your host, Lynn Demons. That's Demons, no demons here, y'all. We'll see you next time, same station. Until then, you guys stay safe.